This is Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast sharing tips on raising amazing teenagers. We are both certified life coaches that have worked with teenagers as coaches, mentors, and teachers. We are sharing what we have found to work best when dealing with teens and tough issues.
This is Abby and Cheree. Let's talk teens, episode 40, what to do when your teen is in a faith crisis.
So it's no secret because I talk about it often because it was such a fun and very hard time in my life. But I used to teach seminary and I loved it. And I know, Sheree, you sub seminary often for your local high school.
I used
And
to,
I
yeah.
I loved it. It's the hardest job I've ever done. It's the most rewarding job I've ever done. But what was amazing to me when I was in that position is like you might call like a faith leader. That feels like such a strong word. But in that position, I was surprised how many of my youth were struggling with their testimony of faith. And obviously, Sheree and I are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so we're going to come from that perspective. But I wanted to talk about like what do you do when your teen is in a faith crisis? And it might be a little micro one and it might be a really big one. And I just think, oh, that can feel so scary. My faith is so dear to me. It's such a big part of who I am and my identity. And so to have, one of your kids come to you, like it can feel so scary. But the first thing that I just want you to know and remember is like you don't have to freak out. Like this doesn't have to feel like the end of the world, which it totally might. But I always talk myself through that. Like when I'd have students come to me and believe me, there'd be some kids that you're like, yeah, I could kind of see or kind of tell that you were in a faith crisis. And then you'd have like the class president come up to you and be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, or I just don't know about my testimony. And you'd be so floored. So guess what? This is a really normal thing that I think is part of that teenage development of it's the first time that they have to really stand on their own 2 feet when it comes to their faith and their testimony and figuring that out. So when they have questions and doubts and might even say, hey, I'm in like a faith crisis right now, we don't have to freak out as parents. Like this isn't life or death. This isn't the end of the world. And this is actually very, very, very normal for a teenager to go through.
Very normal. In fact, I used to call it a faith crisis, and I think now I call it more like a faith journey
Mm.
because it really is something that they need a lot of times need to learn and experience and really figure out what they believe for themselves. With that being said, I've experienced that a little bit, a lot in my family, and I wish I would have listened to what you just said, years ago, because I think I approached it with so much fear instead of like nothing's gone wrong. At first I think I was so freaked out about that and so worried and so fearful about it that I didn't approach it the right way, and I overreacted, and so. I love that. Like, don't freak out. Nothing's gone wrong. Like, it's all good. And that's, I think, where my brain, when I started to realize that, went to okay, this is a journey instead of a crisis. Because a crisis to me brings fear, and a journey is like, there's, there is progression in this, there's learning in this, there's growth in this.
Well, and we need to address this. Like, you feel like a failure as a parent. Like, you really do.
Yep.
Like, and oh man, you feel gutted. You feel like a failure. You're like, what did I do wrong? Did I not do enough family home evenings? Did I not do enough scripture study? Right? Like, the blame layers on so heavy. And so, like, just, put that aside. It's going to come. It's going to come in this giant gunny sack and just try your best to go, okay, shame, guilt, blame. You're going to sit over here for a little bit while I figure this out because this doesn't have to be the end of the world. And with that, I think the second thing to do is to really normalize this experience with your son or daughter. And so when they've come to you, right, hopefully whether it's more of a formal like, hey mom, dad, I need to talk to you about this, or maybe on Sunday they're like, I just don't know what I think about going to church anymore, right? To just normalize that. And I think it's so powerful to say, you know what? When I was 15, I remember thinking like, what am I doing at church? Like, I don't even like these other young women that are sitting next to me, right? And just normalizing that we all have questions. I love Elder Holland gave a talk and he said, real faith, Abrahamic faith, is always in crisis. And Cherie, I'll be the first to admit to you, I don't know exactly what that means. Like, I'm like, I don't know if I know what that means, Elder Holland. I have so many questions. But it really was empowering for me to hear that and to go, Oh, okay. I'm okay to have questions. I'm okay. The other day, my sister and I were talking about the gospel and, come follow me and all this stuff. And she was like, I don't have a testimony of that. And it for a second, I was like, oh. And then she's like, but that's okay because I have a testimony of a lot of other things. And so I just think when we normalize that, our teen, all of a sudden, it doesn't have to feel so scary for them, right?
Yeah. Oh, so many thoughts on that. Because I think it is that whole like allowing us to engage in the wrestle, that we don't have to know all the things. Our kids don't have to know all things. They don't have to have a testimony of everything, but they get to engage in the wrestle of gaining a testimony about certain things or putting certain things on a shelf. But one thing that David Butler, I follow him on Instagram. Maybe many of you do. I love so many things he says. But one thing he said that really hit me, oh, wow, if it was a few years ago, is he talked about how like when a tree in the fall le le loses its leaves because they change color and then they fall down, he doesn't go and chop down the tree,
Mm.
right? Like, and that's even going back to like nothing's gone wrong, but also just like remembering it's okay. Like this might take time, but guess what? The leaves come back in the spring. And I really liked that of just thinking about that, of normalizing the experience that it's normal for trees to lose their leaves in the fall. And then guess what happens in the spring? And maybe, it won't be like that short time period. Probably a lot of
Might be
times
years that they're in the winter fall, you know?
it might not even happen in this lifetime,
Yeah.
right? But it's that whole thing of like knowing that it will probably come back and I don't need to go chop down that tree. And I think that that really helped me like look at things differently.
Hmm.
So it's good.
Yes. And, part of this with your son or daughter, and especially, gauge this as like if you're driving in the car to church and they're like, I just don't know what I think. And we're like, this maybe not the time to do this, but later ask some questions and say, tell me more. Tell me more about, some of your thoughts on this, why you don't want to go to Young Men's. Tell me more about why, you don't want to go on a mission, or tell me more about why you didn't sign up for seminary, right? And why I got this call that you weren't on the list. And to truly come from a place of like being open, not being abrasive, because there's a big difference in the answers you're going to get when you're like, why didn't you sign up for seminary? And you went behind my back. And, that anger is going to get a lot of fear, a lot of pushback, a lot of rebellion versus like, what's going on? Right? Talk to me. And hopefully we've built up that relationship that our youth feels like they can talk to us about tender issues. And man, is faith tender, right? It's hard to say, hey, I don't know what I think about this, or this doesn't make sense to me. It used to, but now it doesn't, right? It's really hard to have those conversations. So ask your youth questions, but especially come from a place where we put that blame, shame, anger all aside so that we can just be ready to hear what they say. And who knows what they'll say.
I think myself, I've had a lot of learning in this with, and I love that asking questions because I've had a few experiences with it. And one of our boys, when he was a teenager, definitely, just was in that faith journey and pushing it away. And I think one of the things that I did well with him was just allowing the journey and asking questions and also just allowing space for it. Like
Mm.
didn't need to push through it, right? I did really good at just loving him where he was at. I did really, really great with that. And guess what? He is on a mission for our church now. He didn't go till he was 20 and typically they go 18, but to watch him like, as we asked him questions, as we let it be his journey to watch him figure it out on his own and gain his own testimony and his own desire, it's been beautiful. It's been the most incredible thing ever, right?
Yeah.
I have one that still hasn't chosen to be part of our faith, and I am getting to practice like also holding space for that and realize like nothing has gone wrong. Hopefully I can get in a place where I can ask better questions for with him, but also sometimes like just not needing to know, not needing to understand, and just holding that like that journey space for him too.
Yes. Oh, and Cheree, that's one of my things on here is right, like hold their hand through it. Like, um,
Mhm.
they don't need to feel ostracized for this. Again, I can't tell you how normal of an experience this is. And it's gonna range from, man, I don't think my youth has a testimony about Joseph Smith to, man, they want to leave everything, right? And there's some anger and there's some feelings here. And so sometimes holding their hand through it is just like checking in with them and saying, "Hey, I know you weren't excited to sign up for seminary. How'd it go today?" Right? And just, having those open conversations and being there to love and support. And especially if your youth is on that young adulthood side of 18, 19, 20, that might look like loving them through their faith journey from a distance. Like maybe you can't talk about faith just because they'll get upset and angry and then you get sad. So that's okay too, right? If we have to be like, "Hey, I love you so much. I'm so glad you come for Sunday dinner." And I know to not mention the Relief Society lesson that I taught, right? And that just might be where you're at for right now. I once heard this really great insight from this guy who had left the church and actually came back. And he said the weirdest part about leaving your religion is you leave and you still feel like a Mormon, to use his words, right? He's like, so he said, I felt this incredible desire to push back on any identity I had with the church. And so he's like, that's when, you go get a massive tattoo or you go drink or you go do all these things to prove to really yourself, like, I'm not this anymore. And so
Mm.
sometimes it's really, really hard to hold your teen and youth's hand through that. But I think it's powerful to know, okay, this is part of them figuring it out. And as a mom, does it gut me? Yes. Do I go cry about this? Yes. Am I devastated about this? Like, yes, absolutely. But also, that doesn't have to impact my love for this child, right? And I get that it's so hard to hold both of those in your hands, but that's very, very normal that you're going to see, especially in that young adulthood, if they've chosen to continue down that path of, a different faith, different beliefs, there's going to be some pushback because internally they're trying to figure out who am I without this sense of identity that came with being in the church.
It's so true. I think one of my favorite two-word sentences, love wins, right? Love wins. And just keep showing up and loving them. And you know what? Let it be their journey and let yourself have all the emotions about it because that's a
Yeah.
real thing. It really is. So great, great thoughts here today, Abby.
Well, and the last one that I'll share, especially if your youth is younger, right? And is in those teenage years. Um, I believe so firmly in just sharing stories of faith. And I saw the power of this. I was in my seminary training and we'd had like, man, like was it an area authority? I don't know, come in. It was kind of one of those last stages of like, are you gonna get the job or are you not? And we had been meeting for hours and we'd really gotten in this part where we were, I don't know, kind of brainstorming questions that our youth have. And one lady, I just so admire her bravery. She's like, I relate to questions about this because I've wondered about this with my testimony, right? And it was kind of like, whoa, like, she just threw out there that she's struggling with this. And I love his response to it was not, let me tell you all the facts or all the answers about this. Let me give you all the scriptures about this. Let me give you, he just said, can I tell you when I gave my testimony of this? And he shared a story about how he had been at BYU. He was a young dad and he's wrestling the baby for this devotional and President Hinckley was going to come and he said he went the binky spat or the baby spat out the binky, it went flying, so he's down on the ground trying to find this binky and he said from his head to his toes he felt like this overwhelming feeling come over him and he literally was like, what just happened to me? And then he looked up from trying to find this binky to realize that President Hinckley had walked in the room. And so he just shared his testimony that in that moment, he realized that he had a testimony about a prophet of God because he literally felt it from head to toe. And so he just shared that in response to her question. He didn't say, let me tell you all the ways that prophets are true and give you all the scriptures. He's like, let me just share this story. And it was so powerful to answer a question of doubt with a story of faith because it's not me saying, you're wrong. Oh, Cheree, why don't you have a testimony about this? And guess what? Everybody's testimony is different. And so we can't really fight that. And so I just think it's really powerful to say, you know what? Let me tell you when I realized that I should go on a mission. Let me tell you when I had this overwhelming experience when I realized, oh, I do know how to get answers to my prayers, right? Or even, I think these are even more powerful. Let me tell you about the little baby micro experiences that I've had that I feel like God said, oh, I love you. I know who you are. Because sometimes it's not big experiences, right? Like I can count on one hand big experiences I've had in my life versus oh, the millions of micro experiences. So just sharing those stories of faith and you have full permission to make, like, this is messy. This is so many emotions. And so we just want to wish you the best of luck and realize, like, you're not alone in this. You're not the only mom or dad that's had a son or daughter say, I have questions about my faith, or I don't want to go on a mission, or I don't want to do these things. And it's okay. Like, you will figure this out. You're not alone. I always remember too, I'm not like, yes, I'm their physical mama. And sometimes it's hard for me to admit, but there's, heavenly parents that know them even better and that have a better plan for them. And guess what? They're in charge and I can't mess it up, right? If I'm trying my best, I can't mess it up because they will step in to help.
And this faith journey or crisis could be their exact path back to the Savior, because we all have, our a path that's back to the Savior, and they all look differently. So, what are we to like really decide whether this is a bad thing or a good thing, or just part of their journey, part of their path back to the Savior? So good.
Well, parents, we wish you the best of luck with these challenges and hopefully, right, this is one that you're like, "Oh, yep, I have some ideas," or we're navigating this well, or maybe this one hasn't come to you. And that's awesome. So, we wish you the best of luck and we hope to see you in our next episode. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Teens with Cheree Murdock and Abbi Winslow. If you are looking for more tips to help your teenager, here's where you can find us. You can find Cheree Murdock on Instagram at Cheree Murdock Coaching or on her website, ChereeMurdock.com. You can find me, Abbi, on Instagram as Abbi Winslow or on my website, AbbiWinslow.com. Please rate and review our podcast and share with a fellow parent. Thanks for listening.